The night was cold on the alien world of Luthera, the kind of cold that crawled under the skin and made a man feel small. Rain fell gently from a greenish sky, tapping against the thin metal roof of a small tent that stood alone in the valley. Inside that tent, a single human sat beside a weak fire, his hands shaking slightly as he warmed them over the flickering light. Captain Ryan Cole had been alone for 73 days. He counted every one of them. He remembered each morning when he opened his eyes, hoping he'd wake up back on Earth, or at least inside the ship he'd once commanded. The horizon dawned, but that ship was gone, burned and broken when it crashed through Luthera's atmosphere. The wreckage had scattered across the valley, and most of his crew had never made it out alive. Ryan had survived only because the natives had found him before the storm did. They were called Lutherans, tall, silver-skinned beings with living armor that shimmered in the light. They were graceful, strong, and quiet. Their voices sounded like songs carried by the wind. They treated him like a fragile creature made of glass, something that didn't quite belong among them. He couldn't blame them. He didn't belong anywhere anymore. Every night, Ryan returned to this little tent, his only reminder of home. It smelled faintly of oil, smoke, and earth. The thin blanket he used was torn in places, but it was his, something he'd held onto when everything else was taken. The heater beside him crackled softly, throwing shadows against the tent walls. He often talked to those shadows, not with words, but with memories. He remembered his crew laughing, his best friend calling him Captain Sunshine, because he smiled too much even in war. He remembered the day they left orbit around Earth, everyone full of hope. He remembered the stars, how they looked like promises waiting to be kept. Now he only had rain. Sometimes when the wind howled outside, Ryan thought he could hear voices. Not alien ones, but human. He would lift his head, heart pounding, thinking maybe one of them survived. But when he stepped outside, there was only the storm, and the silver trees whispering in the dark. The Lutherans came by sometimes. They brought food, odd glowing fruits and pieces of cooked animal that he could barely chew. They didn't say much. They would leave it near the tent and vanish like mist. Only one of them stayed long enough to speak. Her name was Saraith. She was different from the others. Her armor gleamed brighter, her eyes sharper, her presence heavier like a storm in human form. Ryan had seen her watching him sometimes from a distance, standing tall among the glowing trees. She always looked like she wanted to say something, but never did. He didn't know why she cared. Maybe it was pity. Maybe curiosity. Maybe she just wanted to understand why a broken human kept trying to survive on a world that clearly didn't want him. Tonight, Ryan stared at the small fire until his eyes blurred. He had repaired the heater 3 times already. If it broke again, he wouldn't have the strength to fix it. His hands were too cold, his body too tired. He thought about the emergency beacon, how it had stopped blinking weeks ago. No one was coming for him, not now, not ever. He sighed and rubbed his face, whispering to the empty air, "Guess this is home now." Outside, the rain grew heavier. Thunder rolled through the valley like the growl of a distant beast. The tent shuddered but held. Ryan pulled the blanket tighter around his shoulders and stared at the flickering light. For a moment, he imagined someone sitting across from him, a crewmate, a friend, someone who could remind him what it felt like to be human. But there was only silence. He closed his eyes and leaned back, listening to the rhythm of the rain. His heart ached, not from fear, but from emptiness. It wasn't death he was afraid of. It was being forgotten. Outside, through the thick curtain of rain, a figure stood near the edge of the camp. Silver light rippled across her armor, and her glowing eyes fixed on the lonely tent. Saraith had watched him long enough to know his routines. He would light the fire, stare at it until his eyes dimmed, then fall asleep with tears he thought no one saw. But she saw. She always saw. And tonight, for the first time since finding him, the warrior took a single step closer to the human's fragile shelter. The rain hissed softly as it hit her armor. Something inside her chest stirred, something unfamiliar. She did not yet know it, but this night would change everything. For the man in the tent, and for the warrior who had never known what it meant to care. The night deepened, and the rain softened to a whisper. Inside the small tent, Captain Ryan Cole sat half asleep beside the dying heater. His head rested against the cold metal wall, his breath fogging in the chilly air. The firelight flickered weakly, making his shadow dance across the fabric like a ghost that refused to leave. Then came a soft sound. Not the rain, not the wind. It was footsteps. Heavy, steady, deliberate. Ryan lifted his head, alert. He grabbed the small tool lying beside him, the closest thing he had to a weapon, and waited. His heart beat faster, but he told himself it was probably just another patrol checking on him. They never entered the tent. They always kept their distance. But this time the flap moved. A tall figure stepped inside, blocking the light for a moment. The air seemed to change, heavier, charged. She stood there silently, her armor gleaming in shades of silver and blue. The soft light from her body filled the small space like moonlight on water. It was Sci-Fi. Ryan relaxed slightly, lowering the tool. "Didn't expect visitors," he said quietly, his voice rough from disuse. Sci-Fi looked around the tent, her gaze calm but curious. It was a strange little shelter, so small, so fragile. Humans built such weak things, yet somehow they survived. "You should not sleep in the cold," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You will weaken." Ryan gave a tired half-smile. Too late for that, she didn't smile back. Lutherans didn't show emotion the same way humans did. But there was something different in her tone tonight. Something gentle, almost hesitant. She took a step closer and the soft hum of her armor filled the silence. "I see you here every night," she said. "Alone. You do not speak to my people. You do not ask for help." He looked into the fire. "Your people saved my life. That's already more than I deserve." Sci-Fi tilted her head, studying him. "You think survival is a gift?" Ryan chuckled bitterly. "Sometimes it feels like punishment." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You mourn your fallen ones." He nodded, staring into the dimming flames. "Every single one." They were more than crew. They were family. The words came out heavy, each one pressing against his heart. He hadn't said them aloud before. He didn't realize how much he needed to. Sci-Fi lowered herself to the ground across from him. The motion was graceful, deliberate. Her armor shifted slightly as she moved, the living material responding to her breath. Ryan watched her carefully. She looked like a statue brought to life. For a long moment they sat in silence, listening to the rain. The world outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the soft sound of water and the crackle of the dying fire. Finally, she spoke. "When my clan was destroyed, I was told to forget, to serve, to never speak of them again. Our way is silence." Ryan looked up slowly. "You lost people too?" She nodded once. "I was the youngest warrior of the House of Vare. When the Great War ended, there was no one left to return to. I survived only because my armor refused to let me die." Her eyes flickered faintly as she spoke, the glow dimming like the memory hurt to recall. Ryan swallowed hard. "Guess we're both ghosts then." For the first time, Sci-Fi looked directly into his eyes. Really looked. She had seen humans before, but none like this. Most were loud, proud, trying to prove their worth. But this one, he was quiet, fragile on the outside, yet still burning inside. "You are not a ghost," she said softly. "You are alive. That matters," he smiled faintly. "Alive isn't the same as living." That sentence stayed in the air like smoke curling between them. Sci-Fi didn't know how to answer. Her world was built on strength, discipline, purpose. But in that small tent surrounded by rain and silence, she began to understand that there was another kind of strength, the kind that came from simply enduring pain. She noticed how his hands trembled when he spoke, how tired his eyes were, and yet how steady his voice remained. Humans were strange. They broke and bled, but somehow they kept moving forward. Without realizing it, she felt something shift inside her, a crack in the armor she had worn not just on her body, but in her heart. Ryan leaned back and sighed. "I don't even know why you're here, but thanks for staying." Her answer came after a pause. "I do not know why either." The tent fell quiet again. The fire dimmed to a soft orange glow. Sci-Fi's gaze lingered on him, on the man who carried loss like a cloak but still managed to sit upright against the storm. When she finally stood, she did not turn to leave immediately. She looked once more at him, then at the small fire struggling to stay alive. She reached out her hand and the light from her armor extended. Soft, warm energy feeding the flame until it burned brighter again. Ryan stared in surprise. "How did you—" She simply said, a reminder. Even a small fire can outlast the night. Then she stepped outside into the rain, her silhouette glowing faintly as she vanished into the darkness. Inside the tent, Ryan stared at the now steady flame. His chest felt tight, but not from sadness this time. Something else, something like hope, flickered quietly within him. And outside, Sci-Fi walked through the storm, unaware that her own armor had started to pulse differently, as if responding to something new, something human. The next night came quietly. The storm had passed, but the air was still cold and heavy with mist. A soft silver fog rolled over the valley, wrapping everything in silence. Ryan sat inside his tent again, staring at the same small fire, feeling the same hollow ache in his chest, but something was different tonight. He kept thinking about her. The tall alien warrior who had stepped into his world of loneliness and spoken words that somehow stayed inside his mind. Even a small fire can outlast the night. He whispered those words to himself now, almost like a prayer. For the first time in weeks, he had repaired the heater not out of survival, but out of purpose. Maybe, just maybe, she would come again. Outside, a shadow moved through the fog. It was graceful, silent, a familiar shape with glowing eyes and flowing armor that shimmered like liquid silver. Sci-Fi hesitated near the edge of his camp. Her heart, or what her people called the core light, pulsed softly beneath her armor. She didn't understand why she had returned. Warriors did not visit humans twice. They offered help once, then let fate decide the rest. But something in her chest had refused to stay still. Before she could change her mind, she stepped toward the tent. Ryan looked up as the flap opened. His breath caught. "You came back." "I said the fire should outlast the night," she said simply. "I wanted to see if it did." He smiled. Not the polite kind, but the tired, honest one that comes from real gratitude. "It did, thanks to you." She stepped inside and sat down without being asked. The tent was small, barely enough for one human, yet her presence seemed to fill it completely. Her armor gave off a soft light, and for a moment Ryan felt as if the stars themselves had entered the tent with her. Neither of them spoke for a while. The quiet was comfortable this time, not heavy like before. The fire flickered between them, painting golden light across her faceplate. Ryan studied her, wondering what she looked like beneath all that armor. "You know," he said after a pause, "when I first saw your people, I thought the armor was just armor, but it's alive, isn't it?" Sci-Fi nodded slowly. "It is part of us. It grows with us, learns our emotions, shields us from pain. Without it, we are..." "Burr! Burr!" Ryan tilted his head. "You mean unprotected?" She hesitated. "Not just that. When our armor falls, our hearts are visible. It is not our way to show that." Ryan's gaze softened. "Sounds lonely." Her eyes flickered with faint light like stars behind clouds. "Lonely?" she repeated as if testing the word. "Perhaps. But to be strong, one must not show weakness." Ryan poked the fire with a stick, his voice quiet. "Maybe strength isn't about hiding pain. Maybe it's about living with it." For a moment she didn't answer. Then she said softly, "You speak like a sage, yet you sit here dying of sorrow." He laughed under his breath. "Guess I'm not a very good sage then." That laugh did something strange to her. It was rough and broken, but it carried warmth, a sound that felt alive. Lutherans didn't laugh. Not like that. They didn't understand why it made the heart feel lighter. She found herself watching him closely, studying his face, his hands, the small movements that carried more emotion than words. Humans were fragile, but their souls burned bright. They felt everything deeply, joy, pain, love, loss, and still they kept moving. For the first time, Sci-Fi envied that. Ryan noticed her silence and asked softly, "Sci-Fi, do you ever feel lonely?" Her eyes lowered and the light on her armor dimmed. "A warrior does not feel. We serve, we protect, we do not dream. But you're here," he said gently. "You came back. That tells me you do feel something." The words touched something hidden within her. Her hand trembled slightly, and her armor responded with a faint ripple of light. "Perhaps," she whispered. "Perhaps I came to understand what makes you endure when even hope is left." Ryan looked at her with quiet wonder. "Because that's all we have left. The choice to keep trying." For a long while, they just sat there. The fire crackled softly. The fog pressed against the tent walls, and time seemed to pause. Then slowly, Sci-Fi reached up to her neck and touched a part of her armor. It shimmered for a moment, then withdrew slightly from her face, just enough for him to see her eyes clearly for the first time. They were deep blue, glowing faintly like stars in the ocean. And in them, Ryan saw something he hadn't seen in anyone since his crash. Kindness. Thank you for the fire, she said quietly. Any time, he replied. And when she stood to leave, the warmth she left behind stayed longer than the fire. As she walked away into the mist, her armor's light pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. She didn't understand it yet, but something inside her had begun to change. The cold metal between her and the world had felt safe for so long, but tonight it had felt heavy. And for the first time in her life, Saraith wondered what it would feel like to take it off completely. The next morning came softly over the valley of Luthera. Mist hung low over the glowing trees, and the air smelled faintly of silver rain. Ryan woke to the dim warmth of his small fire, blinking against the pale light that crept through the tent walls. For a few seconds, he didn't move. He listened to the faint hum of the alien world outside, the distant birds that sang like metal chimes, the low rumble of the wind brushing over the valley floor. He had almost forgotten how peaceful mornings could be, and then he remembered her. Saraith. He sat up slowly, rubbing his face. It had been 3 nights now since she first entered his tent. 3 nights since the lonely silence of his world had been broken by the voice of an alien warrior who somehow understood his pain. He wasn't sure what she was to him. A friend. A guardian, or maybe something he didn't have a name for yet. All he knew was that every time she came, the world felt less empty. Outside, footsteps approached. Calm, strong, certain. He didn't need to look to know who it was. When the tent flap moved, the morning light followed her inside. Her armor shimmered faintly, reflecting the firelight. But Ryan noticed something new. The glow wasn't as bright as before. It pulsed unevenly, almost like it was tired. Good morning, he said softly. Morning, she replied, the word sounding strange in her accent. Saraith stood silently for a moment, her eyes moving over the small tent, the heater, the small fire he had kept alive again. You have rebuilt the flame, she said. He smiled a little. Told you I'd keep it going. She stepped closer, her tall frame casting a shadow across the tent floor. The hum of her armor filled the silence again, a steady, living rhythm. But today there was something else in it, something unsteady. You look tired, Ryan said carefully. Is everything okay? She hesitated. The armor reacts to emotion. It is unsettled, Ryan blinked. Emotion? Her eyes lowered slightly. Lutherans do not show weakness. We are trained from birth to silence our hearts. But when we feel, the armor shifts. It does not know what to protect us from. For a moment, Ryan just looked at her. The warrior who always seemed so untouchable, now standing in front of him uncertain, fragile in her own way. You don't have to hide what you feel, he said softly. Not with me. Her eyes met his, glowing faintly. That is not our way. Maybe it should be, he whispered. The silence that followed was heavy but not cold. It was filled with something unspoken, a kind of quiet understanding. Then, slowly, Saraith reached up and touched the side of her chest plate. The living armor responded, peeling away in smooth layers like water turning to mist. The faint hum dimmed and the light beneath her skin began to shine through, soft blue and alive. Ryan froze. He didn't know if he should look away or not. The armor had always made her seem distant, powerful, untouchable. Without it, she looked human, not in form but in feeling. I have not done this since the war, she said quietly. To remove the armor is to stand unguarded. To trust, Ryan swallowed. Why now? Because I am tired of silence, she whispered. The armor continued to retract from her shoulders, her arms, her face, until finally, he saw her as she truly was. Her skin glowed faintly, covered in soft patterns like light etched into glass. Her eyes were luminous, filled with warmth and sadness all at once. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled softly between them. Ryan finally said, You're beautiful. She blinked, surprised. We do not use that word. You should, he said gently. It means something worth seeing. Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. You say strange things, human. He laughed quietly. Yeah, we do that a lot. The air between them grew warmer. It wasn't just the fire. It was something else, something alive and fragile. 2 souls from different worlds sitting together in the quiet morning, both learning what it meant to be seen. Then, Saraith lowered her gaze. When I first found you in the snow, I thought you were weak, she said. But now I see, You are strong in a way I was never taught to be. You endure pain and still find kindness in it. Ryan shook his head. No, I just survive. That's all? She looked up at him, her eyes steady. No, Captain Cole, you live. Her words struck him deeper than he expected. It wasn't praise. It was truth, spoken from someone who finally understood what it meant to be alive. Outside, the sun began to rise, spreading pale light through the mist. Inside the tent, Saraith's armor remained folded away, silent and still. For the first time, she didn't rush to put it back on. She sat there beside him, her bare hand resting near his, the faint glow of her skin blending with the warmth of the fire. And in that moment, Ryan realized that her armor wasn't the only thing breaking apart. Something inside his heart, something frozen for months, was starting to thaw. The fire burned brighter that evening. Its soft glow filled the tent with a warmth that neither Ryan nor Saraith had felt in a long time. Outside, the alien night sang with quiet sounds, distant creatures calling from the forests, the slow hum of glowing plants opening to the moonlight. Inside, time seemed to stand still. Saraith sat beside Ryan without her armor. The air shimmered faintly around her bare skin, as if her very presence carried light. She looked calm, but her heart, her core light, pulsed fast beneath her chest. She had fought 1,000 battles, faced storms and death, but never something like this, the feeling of being seen. Ryan handed her a small cup of warm liquid. It wasn't much, just purified water from his survival pack, but it was his way of offering peace. She took it carefully, her long fingers brushing his hand for the first time. Her touch was cool but gentle. You still share even when you have so little, she said softly. He smiled faintly. That's what humans do. We share what we can, even if it's almost nothing. Saraith tilted her head, watching him with quiet curiosity. My people would not understand that. We take what we earn. We give nothing freely. That sounds lonely, Ryan said. She looked down. It is. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of memories of things both of them had lost. The sound of the fire crackling became the rhythm of their shared pain. After a while, Ryan spoke again, his voice gentle but heavy. You said you lost your clan. What happened? Her glowing eyes dimmed slightly. We were a proud house, the House of Vare. We fought in the Great War to defend our world. But our pride blinded us. We refused peace when it was offered. I was young, too proud to see the truth. When the war ended, my people were gone, burned by our own fire. I am the last. Her voice broke slightly at the end, though she tried to hide it. Ryan looked at her with quiet understanding. You survived, Saraith. That means something. She met his gaze. Survival is not the same as living. He smiled sadly. Yeah, I said that once too. They shared a faint, knowing look, two lost souls recognizing the same wound in each other. Then slowly, Ryan began to speak about his own past. He told her about Earth, about the blue skies and the smell of rain after summer heat, about children playing in city streets, about the laughter that used to echo through his ship. He told her about his crew, how they sang old songs on long nights and believed they were unstoppable. And then he told her how it all ended. The fire, the crash, the silence. When he finished, Saraith didn't speak for a long time. Her eyes shimmered softly, reflecting the firelight. Your world sounds alive, she whispered. So much feeling, so much color. We live in silver cities and speak in silence. But your people, you live in emotion. Ryan chuckled weakly. Yeah, sometimes too much. I envy that, she said quietly. I envy the way you can break and still keep moving. He looked at her, his voice low. You think I'm strong, but I'm not. I wake up every day and pretend I can survive. I'm just scared. Her gaze softened. Then fear is your strength. To feel and still stand is a kind of power my people never learned. For a while, neither of them spoke. The fire burned lower, but its warmth lingered. Then Saraith reached forward and placed her hand gently over his. Her touch glowed faintly, and the armor that usually covered her skin stirred but did not return. You gave me back something I thought I lost, she said softly. Ryan blinked. What's that? Hope, she whispered. The belief that life can be more than duty. His chest tightened. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear that too. Outside, the wind whispered through the alien trees, carrying 1,000 sounds. But inside the tent, everything was still. Two beings from different worlds sat side by side. Their pain no longer something to hide but something shared. For a long while, Saraith simply watched him, the human who had reminded her that even a broken soul could still create warmth. "Ryan," she said softly, "on my world, when two warriors share fire after loss, they are bound by respect. It is sacred," he smiled faintly. "Then I'm honored." She tilted her head slightly. "As am I." The night deepened and the fire turned to glowing embers. But neither of them felt the cold. Something new lived in that tent now. A fragile peace built not from power or duty, but from understanding. And though neither of them said it aloud, both knew that something inside them had begun to heal. Two broken worlds had met in the quiet, and in that meeting, something beautiful was being born. Something that no war, no silence, could ever destroy. The valley of Luthera had grown quiet since the last storm, but the air felt tense that evening. The sky, once soft and glowing, darkened quickly, as if the world itself was warning of something to come. Ryan sat in his small tent, repairing a piece of his survival equipment, the fire crackling weakly beside him. He could hear distant rumbles in the clouds above. The wind shifted, carrying the faint smell of ozone and rain. Saraith appeared at the tent flap almost silently, as if the storm itself had led her there. Her silver armor shimmered faintly, but the light seemed dimmer than usual, responding to her tension. She didn't speak at first, and she just watched him, her glowing eyes studying the lines of his face, the fatigue in his movements, the careful way he handled each tool. "You should not be out here in the cold," she said finally. Her voice was calm, but Ryan noticed the underlying concern. "I have to keep moving," he replied. "I can't let things break completely. That would be useless." Her eyes softened, and for a brief moment the armor that had always seemed so solid and untouchable rippled as though alive. She did not speak again. Instead, she stepped inside, her presence filling the small tent. The storm hit with sudden ferocity. Rain pounded on the tent's roof, wind shook the thin walls, and lightning cut across the sky in jagged streaks. The heater flickered and died, leaving only the small fire to fight the cold. Ryan shivered, the cold biting through his clothes and into his bones. Saraith moved closer, her bare arms brushing the fabric of the tent. For the first time, she did not rush to put her armor back on. Instead, she wrapped her glowing limbs around him, creating a bubble of warmth. The hum of her core light mingled with the fire, radiating heat and soft light into the tiny space. Ryan looked at her, startled. "You don't have to do that." "I know," she whispered, her voice steady despite the storm outside. "But I will. You will not suffer alone." He tried to protest, but the cold was too strong. He sank into her arms, letting himself feel the warmth she offered. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't pretending to be strong. He allowed himself to shiver, to tremble, to be human in front of her. Her armor responded subtly, pulsing in tandem with her heartbeat. It had always been her shield, her barrier against danger and emotion alike, but now it seemed to bend and soften, reflecting the closeness, the care she felt for him. It wasn't protection from the storm outside, it was protection from the storm inside him. "Ryan," she said softly, "you survive not just because of will, but because you endure what others cannot." He looked into her glowing eyes, trying to find words. I don't know how I keep going. Sometimes it's all too much." She shook her head gently. "Then you let me share it. That is strength too." A flash of lightning lit the tent, and for a moment he could see every detail of her. Her armor, once rigid and unyielding, was now almost fluid in its response to her emotions. The layers that once hid her face and body had receded. She was luminous, alive, human in a way that transcended her alien form. Ryan swallowed, his chest tight. You're incredible." She tilted her head slightly, a faint smile touching her lips. "So are you, human. So are you." The wind howled outside, but inside the tent they were silent, sharing warmth, fear, and something unspoken yet powerful. Trust. Saraith's presence, her glowing light, her willingness to stand unguarded with him, made the human feel something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. Hours passed, though neither counted. The storm raged and then softened, leaving only the quiet drip of rain outside. The fire burned low, but the warmth between them did not fade. They had weathered not just the storm of nature, but the storms of their own pasts. When the first pale light of dawn filtered through the fog, Ryan opened his eyes. Saraith still held him, her body and light a shield that had nothing to do with armor. He realized quietly that the storm had passed outside, but inside the tent, something stronger had formed, a bond that neither world nor war could break. "Thank you," he whispered, voice rough but steady. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "No, thank you, for allowing me to care." And in that moment, Ryan understood something he had not before. Courage was not always in fighting battles or surviving crashes. Sometimes courage was in allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and letting someone else stand by your side in the storm, no armor needed. Outside, the valley of Luthera glimmered under the soft glow of morning, untouched and beautiful. Inside, two broken beings had found warmth, trust, and the beginnings of something neither had expected, hope and companionship in a universe that had seemed endlessly cruel. Morning came slowly over the valley of Luthera. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean. Mist clung to the trees, droplets glimmered on leaves, and the distant sun cast pale light across the hills. Inside the small tent, Ryan stirred awake to find Saraith still beside him. Her armor was completely gone now. Not a single plate remained. Only the soft, glowing patterns of her skin illuminated the small space. She moved like liquid light, serene but vulnerable in a way she had never allowed anyone to see. Ryan blinked. For the first time, he saw her not as a warrior, not as a protector, but as herself, fully alive, fully exposed and unafraid. His chest tightened with a strange mix of awe and tenderness. "You," he began, voice catching. "You didn't put it back on." She turned her luminous eyes toward him and smiled faintly, the curve of her lips soft and gentle. "There is no need," she said. "Not with you." He swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing gently on his heart. I don't know what to say." "You do not need to say anything," she replied softly. "You only need to be here, alive, breathing. That is enough." The words seemed to hang in the air, heavier than any battle or any loss they had endured. Ryan looked at her and realized for the first time that he was not alone. He had not been alone since she first entered his tent. She had carried the warmth of life back into his heart, piece by piece, night by night. He reached out slowly, his hand brushing hers. Her skin felt soft, warm, and pulsing faintly with life. She did not pull away. Instead, her fingers intertwined with his, and a gentle glow seemed to spread between them. "I never thought I would find peace here," he whispered. "On a world that doesn't belong to me." She leaned closer, the faint light of her skin brushing against his cheek. "Peace is not found in the world, human," she said softly. "It is found in the soul, and you have found it here with me." Ryan's eyes glistened as he looked at her. "I thought I was broken," he admitted. "That I'd never belong anywhere again." Saraith shook her head slowly. "Broken is just a word. You endured, you lived, you allowed yourself to feel, and that is what makes you whole." The silence that followed was quiet but alive, full of meaning. Neither of them needed more words. The connection between them, fragile, luminous, and warm, spoke louder than any speech. Then, with the first rays of sunlight slipping through the tent flap, Saraith reached forward and rested her forehead against his. Her glowing skin radiated gentle warmth, melting away the last of his fear, his doubt, his loneliness. Ryan closed his eyes, breathing in the quiet moment. You saved me," he said, voice trembling with gratitude and emotion. "And you saved me too," she whispered back, "by allowing me to care, by letting me see your heart." For the first time, they were truly equals, two beings from completely different worlds, bound not by duty or survival, but by understanding, by compassion, and by the choice to let each other in. The fire beside them burned low, but the warmth between them glowed brighter than any flame. The mist outside swirled around the tent, but inside, the world had narrowed to two figures, a human and an alien warrior. Hearts open, no armor between them, no walls, only trust. Ryan reached out and held her gently, feeling the light hum of her being. "So, what now?" he asked softly. Saraith tilted her head, eyes glowing softly. "Now, we live," she said. "We endure together. We create something neither of us could have alone." He smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and wonder. I think I can do that. And as the sun rose higher over the valley, spilling gold and pale blue light across the world, they remained there side by side. Two broken souls from different worlds had found something far stronger than survival. They had found each other. Her armor had fallen away, and in its place, something more powerful had taken root. Trust, warmth, and a bond that no war, no storm, no universe could ever break, because sometimes, when armor falls, what remains is far stronger than metal. It is life, it is hope, it is humanity. And for the first time in months, Ryan felt fully alive.